Hi. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. We are happy to talk to you today about please don't do that and other positive behavioral strategies in the ABE classroom. My name is Miriam Bosveld, and my coworker and friend is Erin Parker. And I'll let Erin talk a little bit about the next slide.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I want to just remind everyone of the awesome website that Panda has out there. We are, Miriam and I are Panda consultants, so we work closely with them and usually do a, presentation for them each year. And they just have so much great information on this website. So whenever, anything from accommodations to mental health, resources. So, we'll just talk about that more, but please check them out if you are looking for some resources. They're great. Today, our objectives are to identify current trends in our ABE classrooms and share how these are impacting student behaviors, present the basic strategy of positive behavior modification. We're going to give some examples of how these behavior modification strategies might look in the ABE classroom. We'll break into small groups to discuss ideas and share those strategies, because we know all of you, have had these experiences also and want to share. And then we will provide the resources from Panda on mental health and positive behavioral interventions. So good. Looks like there's some feedback, but hopefully that'll fix itself. Okay, Miriam.
Hi. So just like we do with our students, we're helping you activate your thinking. So just what do you see in this picture? This will give you some ideas of what we're going to be talking about today and why we're talking about it. I know the pictures are self-explanatory, but unfortunately, there's a lot of problems in our world right now, and we have a lot of refugees, and young students certainly do enjoy their phones. And there's also just a sense that a lot of people really are struggling and need some help in our society right now. So why are we talking about this? Many ABE programs are reporting a big increase in learners age 17 to 24. I was looking at my classroom the other day and I realized everybody is under the age of 36 except one man who's 64. And I think that's unusual. And then I have all these 18 to 22-year-olds. And then also just the countries that many of our students are coming from right now, just Ukraine and Afghanistan and Venezuela. Anyone coming from those countries has experienced trauma and sadness and challenges. In general, there's more mental health concerns post-COVID. There's still people feeling isolated, and then a lot of trauma. And then just in general, families in Minnesota are struggling with food insecurity. So all of this is kind of it's all coming together and making our classrooms at times more challenging. And there's just a couple statistics about, I thought this was really surprising, about just food shelf use in Minnesota. That's a big increase. And then, of course, we know that the pandemic really affected people's mental health. 1 in 5 adults, and then think about our students. They're at even higher risk than probably your average US adult. So just there's a lot going on out there right now. We had a coffee break at the Language and Literacy Institute in January where we talked about this topic, but a coffee break is not really where you solve problems. Not that we're going to solve them today, but it was more of a time to talk and just to see if people were even interested in the topic. And these were a couple quotes that we got on the eval. And we just thought we'd put them up here. It looks like we heard at the coffee break that many people are struggling with the demographic of younger people, but then just someone also said they'd like more information on how to recognize the needs for students of all ages. And then someone wanted a follow-up session. with some research and practical application ideas. So that is what we are hoping to do today. But as Erin and I will stress again and again, we are not experts. We are trying just like all of you are. So, so I think Erin, you were going to talk.
Yeah. So as we said, we're not experts, but we've been in the classroom in ABE for both of us for over 16 years. And we've had issues and we've seen these trends and how they affect our classrooms. And we feel for everyone that's going through that. So what we're hoping to do is we're going to give you some resources from Panda that are proven resources, you know, through research, but we're also going to mainly focus on the ones that we've tried and that we've had experience with, so that we can share that with you, because we know that, you know, the application of these practical application is very important. So this is the positive behavior modification intervention resource that Panda has. It's a handout. We're going to put this in the chat so that you can have access to it. And it's just really helpful. Panda has some great stuff here on, you know, just how do you, one of the main things is how do we identify why the behavior is happening? And so there's some strategies for that. And then, you know, there's some great positive behavioral intervention suggestions. And so we're not going to go through every single one, like I said, but we're going to share what we know, and you'll have access to this. And then also get to share your own experiences and what you know. So, so that will be good. Okay. So I'm going to pull out a few things that are important from that handout or resource, and the research that's out there, and it, you know, what drives behavior, right? So we know that usually when someone is having an undesirable behavior, or showing an undesirable behavior, they have reasons for that. And so it might be to get something, power, attention, approval. It might be to avoid or escape something. It could be classwork, a situation, feeling stupid can, you know, is a strong one, and to have control, or to have control. So, you know, thinking about what's driving that behavior and the underlying causes of that is really helpful. Unsuccessful behavior management techniques are like bombarding the student with too much verbal input, sensory input, or emotion. So just kind of coming at the student never works very well. Failing to determine the true cause of the problem. We'll talk about this because we've experienced this. Presuming students understand what is expected, right? Because sometimes we do that too. We think that they know the rules or expectations, and focusing on extinguishing behaviors rather than teaching skills. So thinking about taking a positive approach to it so that we can teach them those skills, and you know, is more helpful than the negative. So that's, you know, why positive behavioral interventions is because it builds positive relationships, encourages new behaviors, reinforces appropriate behavior, boosts student achievement, which is important, and creates a satisfying teaching experience. And we all know how important that is. So, you know, just a little background on where this comes from and why we want to focus on this. Miriam?
Yep. So we're just going to talk a little bit about our own experiences. Maybe some of you have had some of these same experiences and can relate. So first, I'm just going to talk about my younger students. So I just said, I'm starting out with, they look at their phones a lot. I struggle with it for a couple different reasons. For one is that it's harder for me to read younger students, especially when they're looking at their phones. I don't really, here's an example. One day it was 1:55 and our class ends at 2. And we were sitting around doing a smaller group activity, and a bunch of my younger people kind of picked up their phones. And I thought, oh, I guess they're, they're kind of ready to be done. And usually I don't let them leave until 2, but I just said, oh, well, it looks like we're done today. And someone said, no, there's 5 more minutes. And I just don't understand. I don't understand why you would pick up your phone. If that's the type of problem sometimes I have with the younger students and their phones. I know that's minor, but it happens throughout the day. And I just don't feel like I have a good read on them. So just having students that I don't feel like I can pinpoint exactly why they're doing things is confusing for me. I've learned that sometimes younger students are more blunt, and that can be very refreshing. But sometimes it also takes me aback. That kind of leads to my next bullet point is we have gotten quite a few young people that are really high-powered and desperate to go to college. And sometimes I'm not sure what they think about our program, which is full of, yesterday was the preschool art fair. The children come in our room to sing the song about the letter B. Sometimes I've sensed some impatience from some of my younger crowd. And for example, one 18-year-old, and this is the blunt thing, came to me and told me he didn't like it when I ever repeated anything. He wanted me to do things once and apparently never revisit them again. And when I tried to have a conversation with him about the needs of the whole classroom and not just him, I don't know how interested he was in that topic. I tried, but so sometimes they're different than my older students. And then the other issue I'm having with the younger students is I'm not sure they're always as interested in our typical ABE topics. We're doing housing right now. I don't know if they care about plumbers. I mean, they're polite. They're not acting out. It's just more like I sometimes feel like I'm not as in touch with them as I would like to be. So that's kind of my experience with my younger students. And then just in general, students of all ages, I feel like there's stress out there, and just in general, for many, many reasons. One thing I've noticed is that some of my students who are under a lot of stress, I feel like are they're not as able to engage with the whole class. Maybe a little less interested in group work or meeting people from different countries. And I'm guessing that's because if you're in survival mode and maybe you're here as a refugee, I mean, you didn't come to make new friends. You're in this scary situation and you're in an ABE classroom and you need English, and maybe, I don't know, just less interest in the other students. And then I'm just sensing a lot of interest in topics around survival. We've had people asking about food shelves. Our driver's education class that we offered at our school was the largest one ever. I've had many students say, how fast can they learn English? And then I don't want to really tell them the truth, but I don't want to, it's such a fine line. So anyway, that's basically what I have to say.
Thanks, Miriam. So I'm going to share my experiences just to let you all know. Miriam teaches ESL level 1, and I teach academic skills, kind of that intermediate level, pre-GED. So, there are a few differences, but also similarities. But my young students, I get some that are native born, but that they want their GED because they think it's easier than high school. And so, they're just like, I just want to get this done. I don't want to be in school anymore. And I feel like, we've always had a little bit of that, but that COVID has increased that, that they, that want from them. The problem is they have very low skills. So I feel like they are, coming in with that idea, but they don't have the skills for that because a few of them have missed out on school for the last few years with COVID and other things. So, so that's really sad because it's going to definitely take them longer. They need things high school provides. I found with some of my young people, you know, they need food, they need transportation, students their own age. They don't necessarily fit in when they walk in that classroom because there's not a lot of students their age. And it's very obvious. So I think it might make them feel a little more isolated. I had a 17-year-old, one of my examples, you know, he came in and just thought, okay, I'm going to just, you know, I'm going to take classes for like a week and then take the GED and I'll be done and I can go on with my life, you know. But I really did notice that he never had food. He was getting a ride here to school. He was always waiting around. He was always on his phone and having his hood up and, you know, sleeping half the time. So I really sat down and had a talk with him, you know, about why he's here. What does he want? And then through that conversation, we kind of figured out that he would be better off in our district alternative program. And so we transferred him there and he's doing well. And I feel good about that. So, you know, that can be something we can figure out when we have those conversations with them. Students of all ages, I'm noticing after COVID, they don't know how to do school. I feel like students are kind of, I mean, it's just coming in and they're just not thinking about how disruptive they may be to the other students, especially if they're coming in late, constantly taking phone calls. And I know our adults have issues that they need to take some phone calls. I get that, but you know, they'll actually answer it in class. So those are things that I hadn't dealt with for a while. So, you know, the idea of needing to remind them of rules and expectations and, you know, going back to that, because sometimes we think, as we'll talk about that we teach adults, we don't have to have these rules posted on the board. But finding that maybe we do, or at least some, you know, some form of that. So our title, you know, please don't do that. It just comes from this idea that we could just ask them, could you please just not do that? It's not, you know, it's not helpful to the classroom. That would be great. And you know what? Sometimes it does work, surprisingly, that if we try that, it actually does work. I noticed that, especially with my older students, that, you know, they just aren't aware of theirs. And then the younger crowd also, I think they're just not aware either because they're so used to being attached to that phone. So I think, you know, sometimes this works, but of course, there's other things we need to do too sometimes. Okay, Miriam?
Yeah, hi. First of all, I think someone had a question about what is FLT. It's the Family Literacy Program. And it means that about a third of my class, they tend to be mothers. They bring their children to school, but they need to leave my classroom 4 different times for 45-minute sessions during the week. So it can be complicated because I need to plan for when they're gone. We can't do anything too exciting and new. And so that's why that student didn't really want me to really repeat anything. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And tried to help him understand about the needs of our whole community. But so anyway, just FYI, FLT is Family Literacy Program. So when Erin and I were talking, we were talking a little bit about, obviously we don't like, you know, certain behaviors, but why exactly? And what we were realizing is, as teachers, and that, you know, we have a classroom that we want it, and we decided just to call it the optimal classroom. And basically, your students' needs to be met. No one can focus on learning if they're hungry. It's just a fact. In an optimal classroom, obviously, we can't do anything about people's past experiences with trauma. And mental health concerns. And certainly we don't, you know, we like our young people, but they're young, but we can't really have those things getting in the way of classroom community or interrupting excessively. And in our optimal classroom, we want people to mostly be focused on learning. We understand about adult issues. We really do understand about phone calls at times. But as teachers, you want the majority of the time in the classroom to be spent teaching and learning. And then I know what's really important for us is that we really like it when people work in groups and fully participate. I truly believe the students will learn more from each other than they will learn from me, for a variety of reasons. So when you don't have this optimal classroom, it doesn't feel very good as a teacher, and you don't feel like you're really meeting the needs of your students. So that's one reason we're talking about the behaviors. So just once again, what's getting in the way? A lot of times it's stress, and sometimes trauma responses, and then the young behaviors, the phone use, sometimes inattention, a little bit of drama, and monopolizing conversations has come up. So then we get to the interesting question, what can we do? So we're going to talk about that next. So Erin and I just have a few ideas. Once again, we are not experts, but we've been thinking about this a lot. So we might have a few things to say. So I have had some success with just being direct. Erin and I have been joking about our title, like just stop doing that. And, you know, I've actually tried it a little bit with some of my younger crowd, and it's not that bad. It's probably the first step. I know it's hard for me because I just don't like to deal with adults like that, but I'm getting better at it. And then I do think it is important to be aware of and note warning signs. I had a very distressing situation in my classroom last year. And looking back at it, I can see that some of the signs were apparent right away when the student walked in the morning, that something was off. And in retrospect, I wished I had done something much earlier. But I mean, now I know better. But maybe just if you're aware that somebody probably has some mental health concerns, note the fact that they're not having a good day and maybe do something about it. And then the last one is just, this one's kind of fun anyway. Think of activities that allow for creativity and imagination. And the reason I'm thinking about this is, like I said before, some of our ABE topics are a little dry: housing problems, plumbers, electricians. And I also realized that I think before COVID, I used to be a more fun, creative teacher. So this is, I think probably I'm not the only one that forgot about some of the fun things we used to do in class, 5 years ago, and I've kind of forgotten about. So this was an example of a fun activity that I did. We were doing housing, but I thought of we should think about our dream house. And this one student who is on his phone all the time, he got really excited, and he drew this picture in about 5 minutes. And he's from Cuba, but apparently he's going to be living in Dubai in a house with 10 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms. And he will have a helicopter and palm trees and a swimming pool. And then I said, oh, it looks like you have a dog. And he said, no, it's a lion. So my point is that it was fun. It took 20 minutes. All of the students enjoyed it. Not that we have to entertain young people, but maybe we can just remember some of the fun things we used to do. And maybe this is just me, but try to remember your pre-COVID self. So anyway, here's some ideas from Erin.
That's great, Miriam. And other people were agreeing with that, kind of reframing our own teaching and activities, and especially with the new age, with TikTok and other things out there. But so that's great. So for me, these are some things that I've used recently with that 17-year-old. I had a private conversation with the student, and I asked him, if he wants to be in school, because I know his aunt was giving him a ride, and he had some really bad experiences in his family before that. But I said, does your aunt want you to be here, or do you want to be here? And he said, I want to be here. And then I said, why? Just a simple question. And, you know, he said, I want to get my diploma. I want to get my GED. And I said, well, how do you plan to achieve the why? You know, just that question of, it's going to take something, and it's going to take something on your part. I can't do it for you. So just to make that decision. But that's when, you know, we were considering that the ABE classroom may not be able to meet the needs of that student. And, you know, for the reasons I mentioned, transportation, food, other students, but also counselors, you know, social workers, things that, you know, in the public schools that they get more of. So, you know, so that was important. And with that student, it was a great option for him. He was actually excited when we figured out that there's a program that he would fit into, and it is an alternative program. So it was helpful. And then, you know, finding resources to help the student deal with the other issues impacting their learning. We in our program have started, and it's been many years now, a resource center, because we were finding that, you know, students, there were all these resources they needed that we just as teachers didn't have time to provide and to look for. So we started by, you know, having volunteers run the resource center, and it's just been great. I don't know what we'd do without it, to tell you the truth. It's very helpful to have that. And so that's one idea there. The Panda website has some great resources, and, you know, for mental health and some other things that are impacting their learning. So, yeah, and then posting classroom rules and expectations. This is something for me I hadn't done for a long time, because it was just kind of, I didn't have to, or I didn't feel the need to, because students seemed to understand what those were. But I'm definitely feeling it this year, especially coming back from COVID. And yeah, so that's, you know, I think that's helpful, because what I found is that this happened during the school year, is that suddenly the behaviors are happening and I don't really want to deal with it right there. You know, I'd rather kind of point to something or say, remember, or, you know, instead of having that longer conversation about disrupting the whole class when you're answering your phone in class. So that, you know, I think posting those rules and expectations, because what we find is a lot of times, surprisingly, our students just don't realize, or they don't know what's expected. So very important. I'm getting some questions about the resource center on the chat. And, you know, through the resource center, they offer things like, so when students are having trouble with food, so it might be resources for food, paying bills, how to contact, you know, bill company, or, you know, how to fix something that they maybe are getting in trouble for that they don't even know how to deal with. And, you know, lots of things like that. And so those are, you know, a lot of the things, and there's definitely more. Our volunteers and EAs have really pulled a lot of resources, and there's all sorts of pamphlets there. And so it's really, really nice, because, you know, maybe the students don't even know those resources are out there. In fact, most of the time they don't. So they get a lot of help with finding those other resources, and you know, sometimes someone just to talk to and figure out a plan with. So it's very, very helpful. Yeah, so those are the things we're dealing. Well, and this idea about posting the rules, you know, wait, we teach adults, we don't need rules. And maybe, you know, and we hear that a lot, or we all talk about that. Isn't that the beauty of it? But, you know, classrooms do benefit from norms. And again, it seems that students, especially in this last year or so, just don't understand that. They're just not used to it. So they are, you know, not sure how to behave maybe. And so discussing that can be really helpful to the student and to us, right? And so, because if one student is not behaving, we know that can really, or is, you know, exhibiting negative behaviors, it can really disrupt everyone. So we just, you know, came up with some possible classroom rules. And, you know, just and some of the ideas that we got from Panda, this idea of like creating rules together, keeping the list short and manageable, you know, those kind of things are, you know, suggestions for creating rules. But we just came up with a few that we feel, you know, we need and that we're using. This idea of leaving the room if you need to take a call. You know, it's not, it has to be a necessary call because sometimes they're just at their sister, you know, so that they could call back at a different time. So, you know, but leaving the room, keeping their phone on vibrate, that kind of idea. Speaking English, unless you need to whisper a question to a seatmate, because students really want that. You know, they want, a lot of students want just English spoken. And so when students are going up and speaking other languages, it makes others feel left out if that's not their language. Sitting in a group as directed, talking or listening to your classmates. It's important for learning, and we know that. So being willing to do that and be open to that, and only using phones for educational purposes. So that's the way phones have changed, is we're using them a lot for, you know, dictionary, translators, and so just doing that in the classroom and not for social reasons. And then if you come in late, sit down quietly and do not disturb the class, because I've had a lot of that lately where they just don't realize they're just being so loud and start talking and throwing their backpacks down and just, whoa, okay, you know, we're trying to learn here. So sometimes they just don't realize that. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Oh, we're already at our small group discussion.
Yeah, we really want you to have time to talk because we know you have your own ideas, you've had your own experiences. I think it would be helpful. I mean, you can do whatever you want in your group, obviously, but if you could discuss specific positive intervention strategies that have been or you think could be successful. And if you want to type in the chat an idea or two that you would like to share with the large group. So we'll try to come away from this session with some practical tips. So we're going to be getting you into
maybe about 15 minutes, do you think?
Yeah, 15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Just moving a few people around because, as always happens, we do lose a few folks. So we're almost ready here.
Okay.
Liddy, you can go ahead and stop the recording.
And we see in the chat already that people have lots of ideas, so this will be
Glad at least. The first chat I saw was from Alicia saying that you had great conversation. So I'm really glad you had time to do that. I know for me, I need to talk it out sometimes, and it's very helpful. We were just hoping that people could share out a couple of ideas, maybe limit it to 30 seconds so we can hear from as many people as possible. And we're just going to see if somebody wants to unmute and talk. So does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
Oh, I could share briefly, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Our group at the very end, we talked about like kind of figure out the why of why students are behaving a certain way, and how we're also pressed for time as instructors. And so one of the people in my group, Leah, mentioned, she's like, okay, I came up with an idea that through all this discussion that I want to take 5 minutes at the end of my class, not after class, but at the end of my class to discuss some of these important things with specific individuals and provide that time so that they can come to me and I can come to them with whatever issues I'm needing to discuss. I thought that was a great solution because it kind of can work for everybody, hopefully.
I like the idea of in class, not after class. That is kind of important, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else want to unmute and say a little something? We can also read the chats too. Yeah, looks like people did have some good conversations. trying to read the chat real quick.
Yeah.
Anybody want to unmute? I'm sure there was at least a couple good ideas.
And I see the idea of bringing love and respect to the classroom. Good. That's that idea of showing those positive, behavior, what you want, people to feel. So that's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Whoops.
And I saw a chat real quick about, some of the tensions between like a Ukrainian and a Russian student. And we've had some of that at our school. It's tricky. It's really, really tricky right now. These are huge, big things, and we're seeing them in the classroom. So
I also saw a question about our resource room and how many hours a week it's open. It's open probably about like 3 to 4 hours a week, but we do find that our person who's running the resource center ends up kind of opening it more than that because people need some extra help. So we usually do that kind of in the afternoon. So, just so you're aware of that, but hopefully that answers that question. Yeah, so we're also going to post the chat responses in the folder. So that's a wonderful option. And so if people want to look through there, and I know it sounds like people just had great conversations and some good ideas. And, we can all benefit from some of those ideas. So that's wonderful. We also, I just want to mention again, Panda has a great mental health section of their website, which people can get some great resources and ideas, even of just how to talk about mental health and the little things we can do each day to deal with, feeling better mentally and being positive. So that's a wonderful resource. And then I for sure want to mention, or we want to mention that Wendy Sweeney from Panda will present on de-escalation techniques. I don't believe it's the exact next session, maybe the last session of the day, but she is going to go deeper into some of these ideas, because we know for some people, they want some more, deeper ideas of how to deal with situations when they start to escalate. So she's going to do a great talk on that. Yeah, 2:15, she's doing her talk. So that's good. All right. Any other questions? I think it's time.
Yeah, we see that lunch is next. That's always important.
It sure is. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Yes, great conversation.
Thanks so much to our presenters, and thank you to our ASL interpreters. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here, and have a good lunch, everyone. We will see you at the next session starting at 12:15.